Hello YouTube, I'm Michael. I threw the gauntlet, you picked it up, and so now the ball's in my court. For those of you who don't know, which is pretty much everyone except Michael and possibly those few who I spoke to and probably linked to this video, we're writing a story. I have mine here. We're writing it in parts. The idea is that one of us writes one part of the story, posts it on YouTube, us reading it to the YouTube of course, and then the next week the other partner, Michael in your case, you're watching, you know you need to do this next week. You have 7 days to write the next section of the story and post it on YouTube. The videos must be at least 4 minutes of length, not including the rant that I'm giving you when I've timed this before, so I know it's more than 4 minutes, so I'm fine. So without further ado, I will never say that again, I promise. Let's get started. What do a small metallic object and a young boy of 15 years have in common? The small metallic object was very ordinary in appearance, a little longer than the pen that you'd use to write down notes in class at school, and the colour of silver or white aluminium, dull from being handled and bumped around on a daily basis, but still reflective, glinting light and mirror images as if steam had gathered over your bathroom mirror after a hot shower on a cold day. Along the side, about halfway between either end of the object, was a small switch. The switch sat at such a length that if you held the object in your hand, it would rest neatly under your thumb for ease of operation, and when pushed forwards 1 centimetre, the switch would operate hidden micro-machinery and open a panel on the furthest end of the object. A subtle light would glow from the tip, and then it would become obvious that however ordinary it was, or appeared to be on the outside, it was what was inside the object that made it remarkable. And there we have one of the answers to our question. Alexander Smith was a boy of 15 years. Like the metallic object, he was very ordinary in appearance, of average height, average weight, not good looking but not poor either. Short brown hair and pale brown eyes, not overly strong or weak, just average. He was so very average that even among his 4 best friends he would often be discounted or ignored, not only because some of the other children at school were mean, but because even the nice ones tended not to notice him. Alex often felt like a speck on a wall, wishing that he had at least something terrible or bad about him that the bullies would tease him over, anything other than being ignored. Alex lived in an ordinary city, large and robust with culture and different peoples, which sometimes seemed only to emphasize how utterly ordinary he really was. There was crime and movie stars, singers, businessmen and women, tall buildings of glass and metal, many streets and highways crisscrossing the land it occupied as a grid, with a few long swirling lines making it easier to get from one end to the other. There was a river and a bay, several bridges and ferries and other boats. The roads were always busy with cars, trucks and motorcycles, taxis numbering more than most of the others combined. It was a place where people were always on the move, never stopping to look around to see or appreciate even the marvellousness of human accomplishment all around them. And certainly not one very ordinary looking teenager standing idly underneath the gap between 2 buildings. That is, until he became very suddenly and very painfully unordinary. The second thing the boy and the object had in common was being in the same place at the same time on a Saturday morning, though neither realized the other's existence until they collided. The object had been dropped by a man 2 stories up who took great pains to appear ordinary, but would stick out like a sore thumb if he ever really went anywhere, which was one of the reasons why this large, muscular man in a black and white business suit, black sunglasses, and now a nasty cut on his hand, was in the predicament that he found himself in. His attempts to blend in with the other business people had not gone unnoticed, and he had been attacked and chased all the way to the office window. He did not want the people chasing him to get a hold of the very remarkable thing inside the otherwise ordinary object, and so he attempted to destroy it by hitting it against the glass window and then dropping it outside to smash on the pavement. Unfortunately, his plan went somewhat awry when Alexander shifted at the last moment, and the object hit him in the head instead, bouncing off and falling into his backpack, unnoticed by the man, those chasing him, and even Alex himself. Alex fell to the ground, grabbing at his head and shouting out a curse or word or two. Flinging his hand to his head, he felt a warm dampness, and pulling his hand back down, he found it stained red. His vision blurred, and his eyes and limbs suddenly felt very heavy. He managed out another weak cry for help before the darkness of unconsciousness enveloped him. The sudden movement and shouting caught the attention of many other otherwise occupied pedestrians, and a number of them instantly flocked to the site of interest. one of them dropping to their knees and expecting the falling boy. Others pulled out their phones and flicked over to their cameras, filming the event just in case it became important a few days later. The kneeling woman slipped her arms under his neck and knees, lifting Alex into the air, and moved towards the road. Other witnesses attempting to usher the crowds to the side on the street to the side so that the concerned woman could get Alex to the hospital across the road. By the time the obvious man on the second story was caught by his pursuers and they leant out the window to see where the object had gone, there was nothing left at the scene. This woman, who had been chasing the man with a flock of men of her own, was also dressed in a smart business outfit. Instead of trousers, she wore a knee-length plain black skirt and sensible shoes. Thin silver-framed glasses cast an eerie shadow over her face as she peered down to the empty alley below, her keen eyes noticing the small smear of blood on the sidewalk, her quick hand gesturing to one of her followers to head down and take a look. She had come too far to let the object slip through her fingers now. Whomever kept it from her now, she told herself resolutely, would pay dearly. In the hospital emergency room, Alex was laid down on a bed while nurses patted his wound to stop additional bleeding. He had slowly regained consciousness, only having been out for a few minutes at most. His head throbbed and stung at the touch of the nurses. Alex decided that he should call his mother and let her know where he was and what had happened. But as he fished through his backpack, his hand brushed against something he wasn't expecting to find. Pulling the small metal object free from the pocket it had fallen into, Alex looked it over. A small smear of blood marked its tip where it had hit him. He turned it over in his hand and found the small switch, and like a cat, Alex could not deny the curiosity that overtook his otherwise good sensibilities. Carefully sliding the switch upwards, Alex watched as the end of the pen-like object opened up at its tip, and a small flash of brilliant yellow light forced him to flinch a little, his thumb leaving the switch and the object snapping closed again. Alex dared to open his eyes again, a bright mark in his vision showing him the after-image of the flash. Blinking a few times to clear it away, Alex put the pen down, deciding that it had been one of those laser lights that the kids at school were always playing with. The nurses seemed to agree with his assessment, scolding him for moving while they were working, and distracting them with silly toys. The nurse who was patting away at his head to clear the blood suddenly huffed angrily. "We don't have time for ridiculous games," she chided Alex, who had no idea what she was talking about. "Next time you want to pull a prank, do it at the police station so they can arrest you for wasting valuable time." She dropped the gauze into a small plastic bag along with the gloves she was wearing and pointed curtly at the door. "Get out, before I decide to call your parents." Alex stumbled to his feet, snatching up his bag from the bed and hugging it to his body. The woman who had carried him in moved over to find out what had happened. Alex fought the urge to check his head with his hand, but now that he thought about it, the pain had gone away. The nurse seemed now convinced that he had never been hurt at all in the first place, and Alex let himself be ushered out of the emergency room, still a little dazed by what had happened. He found himself contemplating how, even if only for a few minutes, people had bothered to pay attention to him, instead of passing him over, so engrossed in his own thoughts that he almost didn't hear the woman asking him what had happened. "I don't know," he told her honestly. "I felt something hit my head, and then I woke up in bed." The woman introduced herself as Annie, a 20-something woman with brown hair and eyes like Alex's, but dressed in a white blouse and jeans. "I checked you out before I moved you," she explained on the short walk away from the hospital and down towards the corner shop where she worked. "You were cut pretty badly." Alex shrugged. "It hurt, but it doesn't anymore. And maybe it was just a small cut and it healed over quick." Annie watched him with a sideways glance, and then shrugged as well. "I don't have a better explanation." Their talk moved away from the strange accident to other matters, what school Alex attended and where Annie worked and how long she had been there. Talking to adults was always more comfortable for Alex than talking to kids his own age. It didn't seem to matter what they talked about, however ordinary it might have been, from what they had to lunch to what books they were reading. The conversation carried itself, not like talking to his friends. Each new thing he said had to be more and more interesting than the last, and if you couldn't draw attention to yourself, you didn't speak. You just laughed, or you joined in jeers with the others. The talk was all too short, however, and Alex found himself saying goodbye to Annie and continuing on down the road to the train station as if the whole ordeal had come and gone in an instant. Once again, Alex joined the crowd, fading from sight and notice as he waited in line to buy a ticket, waited in line to board the train, stood in the aisle in the crowded train, filed out of the train when it reached the suburb, walked the 3 blocks to his parents' house, and finally up the stairs and into his bedroom. So there you have it, Michael. You can pick up where I left off. You have 1 week. I had better see the next video on, or something terrible.